The first morning in the cottage felt like exhaling after holding her breath for years. Marissa stood at the kitchen window, coffee mug in hand, watching the mist roll off the lake like breath on a mirror, soft and fleeting. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. Her fingers curled around the chipped ceramic, an impulse buy from a thrift shop, but it felt like hers. Everything in this place did. She had slept with the windows open, no traffic, no tension, just frogs and crickets and the occasional creak of old wood shifting in its bones. It was the first night in years she hadn't dreamed of empty dinner tables or polished floors echoing with silence. The small resort town she'd moved to was an oasis in a sea of regret and loss, a balm for the years she'd spent invisible. It was a spark of hope. Her shop wouldn't open for another hour, but she enjoyed having time to herself. The boxes were unpacked now, except for a few she knew she wouldn't need at once. Vases lined the windowsill in her little store downtown, imperfect, handmade ones, with thumbprints and flaws that made her feel oddly safe. The door creaked behind her. Just the breeze, she told herself. The truth was, she still half expected a voice from another life to cut through the quiet. "Don't forget your hair appointment at 4. Did you call the caterer? Blue looks better on you than yellow." She had performed someone else's life for so long, she barely recognized stillness as peace instead of failure. It had been a beautiful prison, that marriage to a man with expensive taste and an icy smile. It was a life of parties, appearances, but never love. Marissa was not even certain she knew what love was anymore. Her eyes drifted across the water. 2 cabins down, smoke curled from the chimney of a modest A-frame home. She had seen the man who lived there a few times. Tall, bearded, quiet. Once at the general store, once at the diner. He offered a polite nod, and she nodded back. That was all. The realtor had told her his name was Liam, the local handyman. He helped at the marina sometimes, did odd jobs, always charging less than he should. Or that was the rumor. His father had had a stroke the year before, and Liam had come back to care for him. Marissa hadn't asked more than that. She didn't want to know anyone. Not yet. It was still too early. Her new life still too raw, too unfamiliar. That afternoon, she opened the shop for the first time. The space was small, 2 front windows and a counter with a squeaky drawer. She had lined the walls with handmade candles, floral arrangements, and locally sourced cards. Her ex-husband would have laughed at it. He called anything not attached to a spreadsheet unskilled labor. Marisa snorted. The man she had married had no idea what unskilled labor was, nor its importance in keeping the world turning. To him, if you were not an executive-level manager or higher, you were of little consequence in the world. She didn't care. She liked the smell of lavender on her hands and roses in her shop. After the life she had lived, this was real in a way she didn't think she had ever appreciated before. The bell above the door jingled mid-morning. She looked up, expecting Elena, the friendly woman who ran the bakery 2 doors down. But it was Liam. He was taller than she remembered, dressed in worn jeans and a soft flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up to the elbow. His gaze was quiet, not searching. He looked like a man who saw everything and said nothing unless it mattered. "Good morning," he said. "Hi," she replied, brushing a leaf from the counter. "Can I help you?" He walked toward the small refrigerator where she kept fresh flowers. "I need a bouquet, something simple, nothing too loud." Marissa blinked. "For an occasion?" Liam hesitated. "It's for a friend of mine." What was that supposed to mean? A friend could mean anything from a simple acquaintance to a girlfriend. Marissa wasn't sure why it mattered. "What's the occasion?" she asked, keeping it casual. "Some bouquets are appropriate for certain occasions, and not for others." "She just got engaged," Liam said with a smile. "There's a party tonight to celebrate." Marissa's stomach flipped. She was just a friend. It didn't matter, but for some reason, she felt able to breathe again. She selected a small arrangement of soft pink ranunculus, white spray roses, and dusty miller. "Is this okay?" He nodded, then glanced at the tag on the counter. "Marissa?" "That's me." I'm Liam. He didn't offer a handshake, just a calm, grounded presence. Welcome to the neighborhood. She gave him a polite smile, bagged the flowers, and thanked him. He left with a nod. It was only when the bell jingled that she realized she was still holding her breath. The next time Marissa saw Liam, it was 3 days later. She was wrestling with a stubborn bucket of rainwater that had pooled near the porch steps, one of those shallow annoyances that felt bigger when you were trying to live a life on your own. The handle snapped mid-lift, splashing muddy water across her jeans. Marissa sighed with frustration. Do you need a hand? She hadn't heard him approach. He was just there, tall, calm, sleeves rolled up again. He didn't rush forward, just waited, giving her space to decide. She stepped back with a sigh. If you have a spare bucket, I'll trade you a candle and a scone. He smiled. I'll take the candle. Not much of a scone guy. Blasphemy. Don't let Elena hear you say that. I already have. She still makes me taste test her cinnamon ones. She found herself smiling as he walked away. It felt strange, like finding a familiar song on the radio when you weren't expecting music. Liam returned a few minutes later with a sturdy metal pail, knelt to drain the water, and cleaned the mess without fuss. She offered him a towel when he was done. Their hands brushed. Nothing lingered, but the air felt a touch warmer, charged after a lightning strike. Do you do this for everyone? She asked. He shrugged. Just the neighbors who look like they've been fighting buckets. She laughed, really laughed, and it startled her a little. Over the next week, Liam stopped by more often. Not in a hovering way, he was just present. In some ways, he was more real than her husband had ever been. He fixed the screen door that kept sticking, helped Elena haul crates of jam jars from her car to her bakery. Once she spotted him crouched near her garden bed, staking a drooping sunflower like it was something worth saving. He never flirted, never lingered too long. But every time he left, something in her shop or her heart felt straighter. You know, Elena said one afternoon, biting into a sugar cookie she hadn't paid for, if he gets any more thoughtful, I'm going to propose to him myself. Marisa rolled her eyes. He's just nice. Elena raised a brow. He's single and 27 and nice. That's basically a unicorn in flannel. Marissa scoffed, but part of her couldn't help the flicker of something. Not hope exactly, but maybe recognition. The feeling of being seen. The notion that Liam saw everything stayed with her, but the thought did not bother her at all. It was just Liam, comforting in a way she hadn't expected. Still, it made no sense. He was younger, kinder than she deserved. And whatever he was doing here, whatever had pulled him from a life that could have been more, she wasn't sure she wanted to know. That evening, Marissa stayed at the shop late to rewrap a batch of damaged candles. The air outside had a golden hue that made everything look softer. She heard the creak of her porch steps as she approached home and paused, narrowing her eyes. Liam was there, sitting on the edge of the steps, a small toolbox beside him. You missed a loose board, he said, tapping the step with his boot. Almost got me on the shin. She arched a brow. And you punished it with a wrench? A hammer, actually, he grinned. I figured, why not fix it before you tripped and blamed the candle gods? She leaned against the porch railing. I'm starting to think you just like fixing things. He looked up at her then. Not with a smirk, not with flirtation, but with something open. Not everything needs fixing, he said. Some things just need time, or a little care. Something in her chest stirred, slow and aching. Thank you, she whispered. He stood, gathering his tools. Anytime. As he walked away, she stayed at the railing longer than she meant to, watching until he disappeared into the trees. For the first time in years, Marissa wasn't thinking about what she had lost, what she had given up. She was wondering what was still possible. Marissa didn't realize how much she had come to expect Liam's quiet appearances until he stopped showing up. It wasn't sudden, just a shift. A few days passed without him passing by the shop. She told herself it didn't matter. Maybe he was busy, or maybe he had work. Maybe, and this was the thought that stuck like a burr. She expected too much from a man who'd only ever offered quiet, unwavering kindness. She didn't know how to name the space he occupied in her life. It wasn't romantic, not really. Not yet. But it was comforting. Like someone had handed her a coat, warm, worn, familiar, when she didn't realize she was cold. So when Walter showed up in her shop 2 days later with a slow smile and a walking cane, she blinked. Marisa had seen him a few times, once in Liam's company, but they had never spoken. "You must be Marisa," he said, eyeing the flowers by the window. "You've been putting something in the air. My son's been different since you moved in," Marisa replied with a cautious smile. "In a good way, I hope." "Oh, without a doubt, less broody. Still stubborn." Walter wandered the store like it was a museum, pausing at the hydrangeas. "I sent him into town for groceries," he said. "Told him I could manage fine for a few hours. Thought I'd come see the famous flower shop he keeps finding reasons to walk past." Marisa flushed, surprised. "I didn't know I was famous." Walter smiled, slow and dry. "You're not, but you might be the first thing in a while he doesn't feel like fixing." She didn't know how to answer that. Later that week, Liam returned. He brought her a box of old books, saying he found them in the attic, and didn't mention his absence. "I missed seeing you," she said, before she could stop herself. He paused, then smiled, just a little. "Me too." They settled into a routine again, mornings with coffee on her porch, quiet evenings when he read while she watered her plants. Sometimes they didn't speak for an hour, and it felt like the deepest kind of conversation, but that closeness came with questions. She still knew so little about him. One afternoon, she found him sanding a broken chair behind her shop. "So what's your story?" she asked suddenly. "You didn't always live here." He looked up. His hands paused. "No, I didn't. My dad moved here after my mother died. Then Dad had a stroke. I didn't think twice." "That's not all," she said gently. "You don't just trade one life for another because of obligation." He didn't answer right away. "I needed to start over," he said finally. "I needed something I could feel with my hands, something that didn't require pretending." She understood that too well. 2 weeks later, Elena barged into the shop with wind in her hair and her usual chaos trailing behind her. "You're coming out tonight," she said, slapping a flyer onto the counter. "Community dinner, live music, no excuses." Marisa groaned. "I don't do crowds." Elena grinned. "It's not a crowd, it's a glorified potluck with dancing. You need one night of remembering you're alive." As the time approached, Marisa considered excuses. Maybe she could claim a headache or even manufacture one. The thought of going to a community dinner reminded her too much of hosting bigwigs in tuxedos while remaining completely invisible. At least until one got tipsy and made a pass. That was the only time her husband ever defended her. She was his, after all. He was not a man to give up what he considered his. In the end, against her better judgment, Marisa went. The gymnasium was strung with paper lanterns and smelled of barbecue and apple cobbler. People laughed, danced, spilled drinks, and called each other by name. Marisa kept to the edges, until Liam appeared in the doorway, scanning the room, and found her. He said nothing dramatic, just offered his hand. Though feeling lightheaded and knowing why, Marisa took it. They danced once and then again. It was slow, safe, and needed no words to express how she felt. Liam's hands were steady at her waist. Her breath caught every time he looked at her, like there was no one else in the room. For Marisa, there was no one else. Later that night, under the stars, he walked her home, holding her hand like it was the most natural thing. When they reached her cottage, he paused on her porch. "I'm not in a hurry," he said, voice low. "I'm not running," she replied. He leaned down and pressed his lips against hers in a gentle kiss. It was sweet and sacred, nothing demanding, just a quiet promise. Then something inside her opened. Not a flood, but the first crack in the dam. Marisa wasn't sure when it stopped being just comfort. One evening melted into the next, and suddenly Liam was part of her rhythm, Her mornings, her silences, her laughter. He never demanded space, never asked for confessions. But he was always there. She started baking again, something she hadn't done since before the marriage. Marisa liked how cinnamon lingered in the walls, how it made the house feel like hers. She enjoyed having someone who ate everything she made without comment, just a quiet thanks and a second helping. Not love, not yet. Not in the way she used to define it, but it was something better, something that felt like being seen. Being seen by a good man was something outside her experience, exhilarating in a way she never knew was possible. That Thursday, a storm rolled in off the lake. The power flickered once and gave out. She lit candles in the shop, then walked home in the misting rain. Her dress clung to her legs. The wind tangled her hair. Liam was already on her porch, holding a flashlight. "I figured you might need help lighting the gas stove," he said. "I think I remember how," she replied, "but I will not say no." Inside, he made tea while she changed into dry clothes. When she returned, barefoot in a sweatshirt and pajama pants, he had set the mugs on the kitchen table and was lighting the last candle with a match held steady between his fingers. "You look warm," he said, a small smile teasing his lips. "You look smug," she shot back. He shrugged. "Only because you keep proving me right." They sat in the flickering light. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, it felt like the storm was something far away. Marisa didn't know what made her speak. Maybe it was the dark or the sound of rain. Maybe it was just the way he waited without pushing. "My ex didn't want kids," she breathed. "Said he'd leave if I ever got pregnant." Marisa shook her head, the old bitterness coiling inside her. "Of course, he owned everything, so it wouldn't be him leaving. I didn't push. I told myself it didn't matter, that it was better than being alone." Liam said nothing, just reached across the table and laid his hand over hers. His touch was warm, steady. He didn't flinch when she pulled in a shaky breath. "I wanted a family," she whispered. "I just thought I missed my chance." He squeezed her hand once. "You didn't miss your chance," he said. "The chance still exists. In the end, you were just waiting for the wrong man to move out of the way." Marisa's eyes rose in challenge. "What if I were the one who left?" Liam smiled. "Then you were stronger than you think. And you didn't wait for him. You waited until you were ready to leave him behind and move forward." The next day, she found him in her backyard, fixing the garden gate that had sagged for weeks. No one had asked him to. She brought out a glass of lemonade. He took it, gulped, and looked at her like he wanted to say something and didn't know how. "Are you okay?" she asked. He set down the glass. "No." Marissa's heart jumped. "What's wrong?" Liam stepped closer and gazed into her eyes. The way he looked at her did not convey urgency or hesitance, just the sense of a man who had decided and would not be swayed. "I don't know if this is too soon, or too strange, or just stupid," he said, "but I want to marry you." Marisa stared at him. "Not because it's convenient and not because we've known each other forever." Liam paused and warmed her with a tender smile while tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "We haven't known each other all that long, but I want you in my life forever because when I wake up, I think of you. When I hear the wind at night, I hope you're warm. And when I see something beautiful, I think about you." "Liam," he held up a hand. "I know, you think this is insane." "No," she said, breath catching. "I think it's brave." Silence fell, the kind that came before decisions. "I need to think," she whispered. "It's so sudden." "Okay," he said. "But just so you know, I'm not proposing because I need you to say yes. I'm proposing because I know what I want." Then he leaned in and kissed her. It started softly, a brief, trembling brush of his mouth against hers. But when she didn't pull away, it deepened. The kiss turned hungry, searching, needy, like each of them had just realized how long they'd been waiting for something they never believed would come. Her hands gripped his shirt, holding on like it might anchor her. His fingers slid into her hair. Neither of them spoke when they pulled apart, breathless. He touched his forehead to hers, whispered, "I'll wait for you." And then he walked away, not in defeat, but with the quiet strength of someone who had told the truth. That night, Marissa sat by the window with a blanket around her shoulders, watching the rain begin again. She thought of every time her ex-husband had made her feel like a fool for hoping, every time she'd doubted her worth, every dream she'd buried because someone else found them inconvenient. And then she thought of Liam, the little ways he showed his boundless love, the way he never asked her to be anyone but herself. She stood, found her keys, and walked out the door. It wasn't the dress she'd imagined wearing to a wedding, but then again, this wasn't the wedding she'd imagined either. The linen hung softly over her shoulders, the ivory catching the golden afternoon light. Her hair was half pinned, half wild, and her shoes sat forgotten by the porch steps. The garden smelled of lilac and pine, and the folding chairs, all 12 of them, stood in crooked little rows beside the lake. Somehow, it was perfect. Marisa stood at the edge of the path, heart beating hard, fingers wrapped around a simple bouquet of sweet peas and daisies that Elena had arranged an hour earlier with tears in her eyes and a mouth full of instructions. "Smile at least once," she said, "and try not to cry until after the vows. You'll make the rest of us look bad." Walter stood beside Liam at the edge of the clearing, a hand resting on his cane, the other holding a folded sheet of paper. He was officiating. Not because he was ordained, but because Marissa had looked at Liam when the idea came up and said, "Yes, him." Liam had smiled and nodded like it was the most obvious choice in the world. Marisa walked toward him barefoot. There was no music, no aisle, just the sound of birdsong and the hush of leaves rustling above. When she reached him, he took her hand and didn't let go. Walter cleared his throat, fixing them with a wry smile. "You two are something," he said. "I didn't see it coming. But I've never seen my son look at anyone the way he looks at you." He unfolded the paper. "Liam, you first." Liam looked at her like the world had finally made sense. "I don't know what I expected when I came here," he began. "I thought I was done with believing in big things. But then you smiled at me like I wasn't something broken. And every day since, I've felt more like myself than I ever did in the life I left behind." He paused, voice quiet. "I won't promise perfect days. But I promise to keep moving forward with you, to love you when it's easy, and especially when it's not, to build something real, something lasting. With my hands, my heart, and everything I have." Walter gave a small nod, then turned to Marissa. "Your turn." She had written nothing down, but she didn't need to. "I didn't think I'd ever stand here again," she said, her voice low but steady. "Not because I didn't want love, but because I thought I'd missed my chance. I thought my best days were behind me." She looked up at Liam. "But you came into my life like a quiet beginning, and you've made me believe in something I stopped letting myself imagine. A future. A home. The kind of love I never thought I'd have." She took a breath. "I promise to meet each day with you as a fresh start, to leave behind what no longer serves us, to hold your hand and never let go, not because I need to be saved, but because I found someone worth walking toward." Walter folded the paper and stepped back, eyes misty. "Well, if that's not a yes, I don't know what is." Liam didn't wait. He leaned in and kissed her, both hands on her face, soft and sure and full of something so steady she could hardly stand under it. Elena sobbed behind them. Someone clapped. A child cheered. They didn't move for a long moment after, just pressed their foreheads together as the breeze lifted the edge of her dress and the lake caught the light. Later, they sat barefoot on the porch steps, the sky deepening above them. The small group had left hours earlier, and the silence now was a different kind of still. Not empty, but full. Liam reached for her hand again. "You sure about this?" She rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm sure about you." They didn't say anything else. They didn't need to. The bell over the door rang just as Marisa was setting out a tray of daffodils, her back to the door. She didn't look up right away. "Give me 1 second," I just have to. I always liked that about you, came the voice. Always working, always putting things just right. Her fingers froze on the ceramic dish. When she looked up, he was standing in the doorway. He hadn't changed much. His hair was iron gray now, trimmed short, and combed back with the same precision he'd always demanded of everything else. The tailored coat fit like it had been measured yesterday. A man in his early 50s, untouched by life unless he allowed it, polished, composed, and frozen in time. He smiled, and she felt 27 again, standing in the entryway of a house that had never quite felt like hers. She straightened, the scent of cut flowers suddenly too sweet. I heard you'd opened a little shop out here, he said, stepping inside like he still owned the ground beneath him. In his mind, he did. Took me a while to believe it. You always said you hated dirt under your nails. People change, she said, voice cooler than she felt. He picked up a bud vase from a nearby shelf, examined it, then set it down with mild disapproval. I figured you'd come to your senses by now, that this was temporary. A brief detour before you came home. I am home, he chuckled. Come on, Marisa. You've had your time to play florist. We ended things too quickly. You can't be content like this. I'm not playing. And it wasn't too quick. It was years too late. His smile thinned. So dramatic. Is this about the prenup? You knew what you were signing. She shook her head. No. It's about who I became with you, or who I had to stop being. He leaned forward, voice dropping. You're not cut out for this small-town life. You know that. You need someone who understands your world. What if I already have someone? Come on, Marisa. You belong with me. I'm married. The silence that followed was sharp as glass. His face didn't move for a moment. Then he let out a single, disbelieving laugh. Married? To whom? To me, Liam said, stepping forward. Liam had come to drop off a box of repotted herbs. Marisa had mentioned wanting a few for the windowsill. He'd seen the car parked out front, thought little of it until he reached the shop door and heard voices. When Liam stepped inside and saw Marisa standing across from a man who looked like he'd stepped off a yacht ad, his first instinct was to wait. Then he heard the way the man spoke to her. Her voice, strained and tight, told him everything he needed to know. Marisa didn't talk about her ex much, beyond a few comments that carried uncomfortable reminders of the corporate world. Something in him moved. This was Marisa, the woman he loved. Liam would not allow her to face the specter of her past alone. Marisa turned at the sound of his voice, not startled, but relieved. Her shoulders straightened just a little. Her eyes found his, steady and clear. Liam crossed the room and stood beside her, slipping his hand into hers with a gentle caress. Marisa returned his grip, fierce but not drawing strength from him. The strength all came from within. Her ex looked him up and down. So this is who you're shacking up with? Your little mountain boy toy? I don't care who you are, Liam said calmly. But if you speak to her like that again, we're going to have a bigger problem than your ego. The man blinked. Excuse me? Liam smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You're excused. She had never seen Liam like that before. Quiet, steady, and absolutely unflinching. The kind of man who didn't need to raise his voice to be heard. A man who would let no one enter their lives and try to claim what they had built together. Her ex took a step back, trying to mask his falter with indignation. So this is what you've come to? You threw away everything we built for this? Marisa drew in a breath, and something settled in her chest. It was not fear or shame, but resolve. I didn't throw anything away, she said. You did. When you stopped seeing me as a person and started treating me like a reflection of yourself. What I have now is not less than what I had with you. It's far more. It's everything I ever wanted. He opened his mouth, but she didn't stop. I'm not coming back. I don't miss the house, or the parties, or the perfect marriage that felt like drowning in silence. I don't miss the suffocating atmosphere or the feeling of being alone, even when surrounded by hundreds of people. Marissa's voice grew steadier. This is my life now, and you don't belong in it. She walked to the door and held it open. "Don't come back." He stared at her for a long moment, but when he saw she wasn't backing down, not even a little, he left without another word. The bell jingled as the door shut behind him. That night, the rain returned. Marissa sat curled on the couch, blanket around her shoulders, fingers still trembling. Liam made tea, then sat beside her without asking. He didn't press. He just waited. "I didn't tell you everything," she said. "About him. About the way it was." Liam reached for her hand. "Tell me now." So she did. She spoke of the years spent smiling when she was crumbling, of the sharp corrections, the cold avoidance, the dismissal of every need she was too afraid to voice. She spoke of how small she became just to keep the peace, until she forgot what it meant to want anything for herself. Marissa didn't cry, she just let it go. When she finished, Liam pulled her into his arms. Not out of pity, not to fix her, just to hold her, to love her. "I see you," he whispered into her hair. "All of you. And I'm not going anywhere." She didn't answer, just curled into him, breathed in the cedar scent of his shirt, and let the weight slide off her shoulders. Later that night, they lay together beneath the quilt, tangled in each other's arms. When she raised her hand to his, Liam's fingers closed around hers. Neither said anything, but the warmth between them, the safety, the quiet promise, said everything she needed to hear. After her ex left, everything felt different. Not just quieter, it had always been quiet, but sharper, cleaner, like someone had opened a window that had been painted shut for years and finally let the air in. Marissa breathed more deeply, laughed more easily. There was no lingering dread of footsteps, no voice in her head reminding her to shrink. For the first time in a long time, she felt free. Her life with Liam wasn't loud or dramatic. They built it on softness, small routines, steady glances, the safety of being known and not judged. In the mornings, they had coffee together, their hands brushed in the garden, the way he always kissed the top of her shoulder when he passed by, not with urgency, but like it grounded him, spoke more than any words ever could. They laughed more now, nothing raucous, but with the ease of people who had already seen each other's scars and stayed anyway. One afternoon, Marissa was flipping through an old photo album Elena had dropped off for a laugh, something she'd found from the town's Founders' Day 10 years ago. "You know," Liam said, passing behind her with a basket of laundry, "your ex-husband looked like a congressman. I mean that in the least flattering way possible," she smirked. "You've never even seen a picture of him." "I've seen enough of your reactions." She raised a brow. "He was polished." "Polished," Liam repeated. "That's a very kind word for twice your age and confusing you for a corporate acquisition." She let out a sharp laugh. "Says the carpenter, who's 10 years younger than me." He winked. "What can I say? You clearly have a type. You just shifted the bracket." From then on, it became a running joke. Every time she groaned getting up from the garden, he'd say, "You sure you don't want someone closer to your real age?" And every time he forgot where he set something, she'd mutter, "Youth is so fleeting, isn't it?" But beneath the laughter, Marissa started noticing little things. Liam never left his laptop open. He wasn't hiding anything, didn't try to obscure the screen when she moved behind him. But he didn't leave anything unlocked either. His phone he always flipped face down. Walter sometimes paused before answering questions about their past. One evening, Walter stopped by with a basket of vegetables and stayed for dinner. As they ate, he glanced between the two of them and said, half teasing, "Liam was always the ambitious one. Even when he was a teenager, he thought he was going to build something that changed the world." Marissa glanced at Liam, who gave a tight smile and changed the subject. Later that week, while sorting paperwork for a loan renewal on the shop's storefront lease, Marissa opened the wrong drawer in Liam's desk. She wasn't snooping, just looking for a pen, but what she found was a file, neat, precise, and unassuming. It was a quarterly investment report. Marissa wasn't fluent in numbers, but she could read enough to know this wasn't a modest savings account. There were stock holdings, diversified assets, a sum that would have startled her if she hadn't already suspected something. She closed the folder and said nothing. The conversation didn't happen until 3 days later. They were sitting on the porch, watching storm clouds roll in across the lake. The air smelled like rain and pine needles. "I found something," she said. There was no accusation, just calm curiosity. "A portfolio. I wasn't looking for it." Liam nodded. "I figured you'd find it eventually." Marisa waited, sensing he'd speak on his terms. "I co-founded a company," he said. "A startup right out of college. It took off. Not viral, not flashy, just solid. We experienced steady growth. We began to make a difference." Marisa listened, hands folded in her lap. But after a few years, it started changing. The investors wanted more return. We started cutting corners, started sacrificing ethics. I tried to push back, but I didn't have the majority anymore. And then my dad got sick. He looked down at his hands. So I cashed out and sold my shares. I came home with money and broken dreams. Figured I'd take care of him and get my head right. What happened to the company? It tanked. Less than a year after I left. And the money? I was going to tell you. He rubbed his forehead, but when he came up for air, he wore a wry smile. Keeping things from my wife isn't a recipe for a strong marriage. But I didn't want it to be about the money. My past. Your past. I didn't want us to be about that. Marisa placed her hand over his. "I know. It isn't." After a pause, she said, "You did well then. I thought we were comfortable with the flower shop and your handyman gig. But from what I found, we don't need to worry about money." "We don't," Liam said. "We can live our lives any way we choose." Liam smiled at her, that heart-stopping crooked grin that made her stomach do backflips. "I don't suppose you'll be giving up your flower shop, and I don't want to sit around all day doing nothing, but we can do what we want when we want. Travel, hobbies, if you like to paint, or I want to write a book. We can do it all." Marisa looked at him curiously. "Would you ever want to try again? Start a business and do it right?" Liam's smile dimmed. "Maybe someday. The corporate world isn't really for me. That's what I discovered. But to make a difference and not become what I hated, someday that might be a possibility. Then we'll take it day by day. Together." A few nights later, they were lying in bed, the rain tapping lightly at the windows. Marisa ran her fingers along the edge of Liam's forearm, the quiet of reflection hovering over them. "You still carry it, don't you?" He turned toward her. "Carry what?" "The guilt." Liam didn't answer at first. "I walked away with money," he said, "and everyone else got buried in the fallout. It doesn't sit right. Sometimes I wonder if maybe it collapsed because I left." She was silent for a moment, then said softly, "No, it collapsed because the things you tried to hold together were already falling apart. You were just the last one holding the line." He exhaled slowly, like he'd been waiting for someone to say that. "You built something good," she said. "You left when you couldn't stop it from turning into something else. That's not weakness, Liam. That's integrity." Liam reached for her. It started with dizziness, not the kind that knocked her off her feet, but the kind that made her pause on the stairs, blink twice, and wonder if she'd eaten enough that morning. Then came the fatigue, the bone-deep kind she hadn't felt in years, not even at the end of long shop days or restless nights, not even after spending a sleepless night after a party, wondering if she would just fade from the world forever. She didn't think much of it. A cold, maybe, lingering stress. Too much gardening under the spring sun. But then she missed her cycle, and missed it again. The test sat on the bathroom counter like it might whisper its answer before she looked. She stared at the two pink lines in silence, as if time itself had stopped to give her space. Her hand covered her mouth, not with fear, and not even disbelief. Just a swelling, rushing warmth she hadn't let herself imagine. She didn't tell him right away, not because she didn't want to, but because it felt too fragile, too bright. She carried it like a secret tucked inside a quiet song, humming just under her skin. For a full day, she caught herself glancing at Liam when he wasn't looking, the soft slope of his smile, the way he always touched her lower back when he passed behind her, as if to remind her he was there. That evening, she found him in the garden, kneeling by the tilled soil behind the house. He was planting sweet basil. He always planted in long rows, careful and methodical. She leaned against the porch post and watched him for a long moment. "Hey," she breathed. He looked up, dirt on his hands, hair falling over his brow. "Hey." "Can I talk to you?" He stood, wiping his palms on a towel, then walked toward her, expression shifting from ease to gentle concern. "Is everything okay?" She took his hand, pulled him toward the bench beneath the tree, and sat down. "I'm not sick," she began, seeing the flicker of tension in his face. "I'm fine." He waited, silent, perhaps sensing something momentous was about to occur. "I'm pregnant." The words came out quieter than she'd expected. Soft, but certain. Liam blinked, once and then twice. Then he sat slowly beside her. "You're sure?" She nodded, blinking back the sudden sting behind her eyes. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he reached out and pressed his hand to her stomach. Not possessive, but reverent, as if she were holding something holy. His head dropped forward, resting against her shoulder. "I don't know what to say," he murmured, "except that I didn't think I could be this happy." She laughed shakily, brushing his hair back with her fingers. "I didn't think I could have this." He lifted his head, eyes glassy but steady. "You thought you missed your chance." "I did." He kissed her then, slow, steady, anchoring. "You didn't," he whispered against her lips. "You caught it. You caught me." That night, they sat in bed together reading baby books Walter had pulled from a box in the attic. Most were outdated, the covers laughably retro. But Marisa kept flipping through one with wide eyes. "I'm 38, she said, watching his expression. "I know. It won't be easy." He took the book from her hands and set it on the nightstand. "Nothing worth having ever is." She pressed her forehead against his chest. "I'm scared." "So am I," he said. "But not of this, not of us. Every day I think," he said, "what if that failure follows me here?" She smiled, brushing a thumb along his knuckles. "Then it followed you to the right place." The baby had Liam's eyes. Not just the color, a calm storm gray that seemed to reflect every mood, but the way they searched the world like it was something to be understood, not feared. Marissa watched them from the porch swing, her daughter asleep on Liam's chest, one tiny fist curled beneath his jaw. The lake shimmered behind them. Wind stirred the wildflowers she'd planted by the steps. She ran a hand over the swell of her belly. Some days, she still didn't believe this was her life, that she had built it, that she had chosen him. Inside, the mailbox creaked open as Walter shuffled back up the drive with a short stack of letters in his hand. He held one out without a word. She took it, expecting a local flyer or maybe something from Elena. But when she flipped it over, she stopped. The handwriting was unmistakable. Inside was a simple card. Plain, white. One brief message. "Congratulations. You always wanted children." There was no signature, but none was needed. No apology, no accusations. Just a single line, that didn't ask for anything but still carried something behind it. Too little, too late. It fixed nothing. But maybe it carried regret, or realization. But Marissa appreciated the attempt, no matter how insufficient. Marissa closed the card and set it aside. She didn't bring it up again. She didn't respond. Some doors, once closed, didn't need to be reopened. That evening, she stood at the kitchen sink watching Liam dance with their daughter in the living room, a wobbly shuffle with giggles and the occasional squeal. He moved, careful and protective, like their little girl was the most fragile, precious thing he'd ever held. "You're just as beautiful as your mama," he murmured, nuzzling her dark curls. Marisa felt tears prick the edges of her eyes as Liam looked up and caught her gaze, smiling, steady, full of a love that didn't need words. She rested a hand on her belly and called out, "Do you want a boy this time?" He twirled their daughter once, then slowed and walked to her. "As long as we're together," he said, brushing a kiss to her cheek, "it doesn't matter." Later, long after the baby was asleep and the house had gone still, they lay in bed under the soft hum of the ceiling fan. She turned to him, her hand resting over his heart. "Do you ever wonder," she asked, "what would have happened if we hadn't met here? If I hadn't moved to this town?" He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "I don't," he said, "because we did." The stars glimmered through the window. Marisa closed her eyes, listening to the breath of the man beside her, the faint stirrings of a child in the next room, the beat of new life under her heart, and the slow, steady rhythm of a life she'd never dared to dream, but had somehow, against all odds, found. It was not perfect, not planned, but it was real and wholly, undeniably hers.
Original heartwarming fiction every week. Subscribe for your next great story.